All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6:30, please. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, before we do a consent agenda, I need to add an executive session for personnel based on the VSA 313 AI, I think A1 as the rules. And so we will do that right after public comment. So 3.5, we're going to go into executive session for personnel. All right, consent agenda. Can I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? It was Patty, I think, seconded it.
Yeah, but I'll let you do the rest of mine.
Any questions, comments, anything about what's in the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, on to public comment. Okay. Yep. So you can go, Jess, you can go ahead and unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I just do want to clarify. I see that we have 3 public comment, then the literacy and math instruction pre-K 6 presentation, then committee reports for finance, then a second section of public comment, point 6. Is that correct? There will be a second public comment to address the 27 budget overview?
We always have a public comment at the beginning and at the end of each meeting.
Gotcha. Okay. Then if I could be indulged to proceed with my public comment.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Yes, sure. My name is Jess Tugas, and I'm the K-6 music teacher at Castleton Elementary School.
And so you want to do yours at the second public comment?
Actually, I can proceed as right now if that would be permissible.
Yep, perfectly fine. Go right ahead.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank the board and the finance committee for hearing my comments today. I understand we've gotten some clarification on timelines and process regarding potential changes to personnel, so my comments have been amended to reflect this. This past Friday, we had a synchronous meeting with the elementary music team, proposing some pretty major cuts to our choral and band programs. It will involve reassigning every member of the elementary team and eliminating 1.0 positions in a program that's pretty tight as it is. After comparing our current duties to those proposed in these meetings, we found that the changes would compromise a 1.5 to 2.5 cut to the Fairhaven and Castleton band, choral, theater, and modern band programs. In my position, just as recently as this Thursday, I've been approached to offer more contact time and instructional time during the school day. So these potentials for cuts I find really troubling. There are going to be offerings that I can no longer, obviously I won't be involved at the Castleton school, but there will be offerings that we cannot reach the kids just because of timeliness. Right now, I've got a bunch of kids in our recorder karate program. That is our on-ramp to band. With these proposed cuts, we will be removing 4th grade band instruction. So these kids will have to wait until fiscal year 28, which will be pretty demoralizing for them. My colleagues have talked a lot about this over the weekend, and they're feeling pretty similarly and are already mourning some of the losses of connections to their home communities and the robust program offerings that will be severed with the potential changes. I understand that the educational quality standards don't say much to music offerings, but they are pretty brief and clear. In regards to arts offerings, that we are to supply artistic expression and core arts disciplines such as dance, media arts, music, theater, and visual arts in alignment with standards approved by the state board. The standards that they're referencing, we believe to be the National Core Art Standards that were adopted in 2016 by the state of Vermont. And that goes into even more specificity that we are offering arts as a fundamental requirement for all schools, identifying that each school district shall enable students to engage annually in rigorous, relevant, and comprehensive learning opportunities that allow them to demonstrate proficiency in artistic expression and core arts disciplines such as dance, media arts, music, theater, and visual arts in alignment with the standards approved by the state board, thus already mentioned. To remain in compliance with that state mandate, the Slate Valley Music Team has developed our Know, Understand, Do documentation and proficiencies with mind to the Vermont State Art Standards and the National Core Art Standards. They speak explicitly to performance and performance ensembles, including chorus and band, with the expectations that these areas will be offered and assessed as part of our curriculum. Rigor, comprehension, proficiency, which we are compelled to achieve by the state of Vermont, don't necessarily happen in 0.5 to 2.5 days a week. Time is a constant, and it doesn't vary based on the population of our ensembles. But in speaking of population, these programs are popular. In Castleton, I have 36 kids in band, 36 kids in chorus, and that Venn diagram is not a circle. There's a lot of diversity between those two programs. Those are really big numbers for a school as small as ours. We also have voluntary modern band groups at recess and choice time. These kids choose to spend their recreational time learning music performance, which is incredible to me. And those offerings would not be possible with a reduction to that degree. They are the community-facing ensembles. For our military concerts at CES, we work with Crippen Fellows Post 50 and many friends of Slate Valley who are active and former service members. These events deepen our connections with veterans of the Slate Valley. This does not address the popularity of our winter, spring, and mid-season concerts and theater events. As teachers are split between the buildings, those concert offerings will become more limited. And I would hate to lose the public-facing parts of our programs at our individual buildings at a time of such precarity in Vermont education. They are programs that make our district unique and appealing to our students and our families. They teach real world skills. The CES choral and band programs have subsidiary group, our stage crew, that learn and execute stage management skills. They learn how to prepare public comments, deliver instructions, prepare mics and amplifiers, spike and set a stage, cue and move performers on and off set. And the most challenging one, cable management, and they're far better at it than I am. All these skills have corollaries in future careers, be that laying agricultural drainage or presenting quarterly reports. Again, these skills are taught in context, and that context disappears as the program disappears. These programs, be they explicitly named in the EQS or not, matter. They matter to my kids. They matter to me. They are an investment into our community outreach, our cross-cutting skills, and our building's heart. There should be a long, cautious reflection before eliminating core programs for financial salvation. I understand the duress that the state is under overall. Cutting this position and the rippling effects on arts programming that results singles out Slate Valley in an inauspicious light as one of the only districts in the area not to have robust offerings in chorus band and modern band, which is the latest all-state ensemble at the elementary level. I have respectfully asked that the Slate Valley Board and Finance Committee to strongly consider the weight of the recommendation to cut 1.0 from the music department and allow the Slate Valley Music Team time to develop options to preserve these vital programs at our elementary buildings. I thank you for your time, and I rescind my time.
Thank you. All right, any other public comments? Okay, so now I need a motion, please, to go into executive session for personnel. With just Brooke.
So, second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will go into executive session with just Brooke, please. All right, we just have a statement to read. Dennis?
We have received a letter raising concerns regarding an employee. The matter is known to the district. We have taken prompt and appropriate steps to protect students and address the allegations. An investigation is well underway, and we are working closely with the Agency of Education to ensure that the situation is thoroughly reviewed and resolved appropriately. We cannot comment any further on personnel matters.
All right, thank you. And moving on to literacy and math instruction, pre-K through 6 presentation, discussion. You opened yourself up there, it says discussion.
Yes, I wanted the discussion part to be there.
All right, good.
That's the big highlight of the presentation. So I have with me Molly Clark and Jessica Thurston. We're going to talk a bit about literacy, math instruction, and social emotional behavioral learning in our elementary schools. The presentation that I gave in November before I went on Thanksgiving break was really kind of the assessment part of my job. We looked at VTCAP scores, Star 360 scores, and this will be about the curriculum and instructional parts of my job. Hopefully in your email, if you have a device with you, you can follow along with this presentation. It might be challenging to see from where you're seated right now. You could move if you want to. I did print out copies, but as someone let me know, the font size is pretty small, so I know that might be hard to follow along with as well. So I don't know, hopefully one of those viewing spots, whether it's paper or following along through your email or with what's cast right now will work for you. There might be a time when some principals will chime in if they wanted to share something. Last time I shared, I forgot to kind of mention that if something gets brought up that is specific about how things might look at a grade level in the building from a principal's perspective, chime in. And we're going to attempt to hold questions until each of us gives kind of a portion of our presentation. So Molly Clark is going to do the literacy portion, then we'll pause for any questions that folks might have. Jessica Thurston will do math, and then I'll do the social emotional behavioral learning part.
Chris, are you just going to show that? Okay. Sorry, I just don't see it on the thing, so I just thought you were going to use the camera.
They told
Okay.
me to. Yeah.
All right, no, just checking.
We're good?
Yep.
So we'll move into literacy.
Yeah. The reading robot.
I will. Thank you.
So my job as the district as an instructional coach, I primarily focus on the literacy end of things. I wanted to show you this as a visual we use a lot in our world to guide us in the instruction. So when we think of learning about reading and writing, it may not seem very complicated, or maybe it does, but these are all the elements that go into it. So when we look at this, kind of that green is often what we think of when we think of reading instruction, that decoding, phonics, basic language. But that's the beginning. It goes a lot farther. So we also have this kind of language comprehension where we need to focus on, and as instructors and teachers, it's our job to support students in developing their background knowledge, vocabulary, verbal reasoning, and all those things. So there's a lot of things we're asking our teachers to do in a really short amount of time every day. There's also one created for the writing group. It's a little bit smaller, sorry to go in there. That is newer to us. We kind of started looking at that about 2 years ago, so we're much more familiar district-wide with the reading rope. We are doing work with the writing rope. But as you can see, there's a lot that K-6 we are asking our teachers to do. Decoding might sound like a kindergarten skill, but we're actually also doing it in 6th grade with more advanced word study. So kind of the next step is how we do that. We're often asked, what's our program? We recognize there's a lot of tools we need. So as a district, we have a lot of tools, and we really work with our teachers and train our teachers, and our principals do a lot of this work on the regular about using our data and what we know about our students to move them forward. We do have grade level expectations, we do have scope and sequences, we do have progressions for each skill. But within that, we have bookworms, which our teachers are using daily, but they're gonna come across a time where they see a gap that's not covered, so they need to go to a different resource. So I think maybe 3 years ago, we recognized looking at Cognia data and teacher information, we recognized there was a real deficit in our grammar writing. So we brought in Patterns of Wonder and Patterns of Power. That is not a program that they're using every single day, but it's a tool they have access to when they need a certain skill. So the reason we selected all these specific things are because of their instructional practices and the evidence-based practices. So for grammar writing, we were probably trained, you put it on the board, and then you do a workbook. The science now says that's not best practice. Kids don't learn it. They do it, the workbook correctly, and then they go to their writing and they don't do it. So now Patterns of Wonder and Patterns of Power is where they study actual authentic authors. They investigate why something is happening, and then they practice it. So it's much harder. It's a bigger ask than just do a workbook page, but it's kind of developing that understanding versus doing the work. So that's kind of a big look at our reading. On the bottom, you'll see our training. We do recognize that a lot of our teachers that come to us do not necessarily have foundational instruction. When I got out of college, I didn't either. It's not something that teachers are super prepared for. So as a district, we've had all K-2 teachers within their first year do this Reading Simplified training, which is a streamlined approach to practices. It's not a curriculum, but it's highlighting the best practice. So that's a tool we use with our K-2 teachers. We do have some third grade teachers as well. And this is not necessarily a read all the details. So this is a document, and it's actually been updated a little bit. We look at this a couple times a year, and I say we as coaches and Casey, and this is kind of our journey. I think I've been in this position 6 years, and that's when we really switched away from fontus and finale instruction, which national story. So we've really tried to kind of keep track of what have we been doing and what's next. So we're always analyzing our data. We're listening to our teachers at grade release. We're getting impact from the principals on what's missing, what's still hard for our students. Where do we need training? Where do we need resources? What's next? So this is kind of just like our journey within that. So it's a lot. These are all the new things that we've been doing within the last few years. Our teachers are amazing, and they've done a lot of really hard work, and they're constantly asking for more and asking questions on what they can do. No child is going to come to us that's going to do the exact same thing as the child next to them. So this idea of being really diagnostic in our work is, I feel, why we've seen such growth in our literacy world. So that's a lot.
Thanks,
You guys
Molly.
can add anything as people who are in it.
And I'm passing around some of the links. If you are looking at this in your email, you'll be able to access some of those links. But for those of you who are following along on paper or just want to see what a sound-based decoding set of instructional strategies might look like, that's what's being passed around to you right now.
So this is a tool we give to a teacher if they haven't done sound-based decoding. So what sound-based decoding is using the sounds you know to decode a word. But that might look like, I know the 6 patterns of long E, that sort of thing. So that's just a tool we could kind of give a step-by-step, and that wouldn't just be handed to them. That would be used either in conjunction with the principal or with a coach as like a training tool. It's not just a checklist for them to do on their own.
So that's the literacy portion. We said we pause for questions at different intervals.
What are you looking at me?
Is that like
Well, is the one.
you're directly across from my line of sight? I don't know. I just
Okay, I don't want to disappoint.
All right.
How much of your time are you spending with students and how much with teachers?
So it varies. I will tell you the week before Christmas, it's more time with teachers than in the actual classrooms. Our schedule gets changed a lot. Our goal is 70%, but it varies based on what the need is.
The way that we write the investment in the grant is that we use, and we talked about this last week at finance, school-wide money. So Jessica and Molly can work with students and with teachers. There's not a limitation as to their work modeling lessons and being in classrooms and helping support in that way. And that's written purposefully.
I will say it's very different than like having a classroom and you go in and do your same thing every day. If we're in, I can be in 4, 5, 6 different classrooms in a day. So the amount of time that it takes to get ready is a little bit more than it did as a classroom teacher.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, moving along. We don't want to make people wait. The big math test.
That's right.
So Patty was willing to share her results of her performance.
You didn't tell me I was going to share.
I'm happy to just done
What was passed around,
Just a person.
it was a tool that we used, that I used new teachers in to explain why conceptual understanding in math is important. The use of words like always kind of sets kids up to overgeneralize things. And then there are 2 on there that are true. And the rest kind of have a date of expiration that's outlined in that article. If you were interested in any of those, you're welcome. It's a short, fun tool to use for teachers and other adults. So similar to reading.
Whoa, 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 what are the 2 true ones,
Oh,
man?
sure.
You're killing me.
Patty, do you want to give the answers? or-
Well, I had more.
Okay.
Just go with the 2 that I confirmed.
Well, you
were-
confirmed 2 for me, but number 4, so most of them are false. But number 4, you can always line up the decimals when adding and subtracting.
Yeah.
You can always line up the decimals because the number 40, for example, has a decimal if you wish to put a decimal and a 0 in the tens place after it, correct? So theoretically, you can always line up so I said that was true.
Yeah, the two that were true used the word always, and that was something
Oh,
we were
I
trying to
see.
stick
That
away
was the
from
trick, huh?
in math language, because I think when you overgeneralize rules, it kind of breaks down understanding.
Because I also said 7, you're going to use the words, I think what you meant was that a decimal is read and if you have the number 1001, you don't say 1001, you say 1001. 1001 would be 1000 decimal point 1 in the tens place, correct?
Yep.
So that's why I said I said it was true, but I don't know if that's true or false, but
So which is it? What about 8?
8's true.
The triangle's largest angle's always
Yeah, those-
across.
It's
that
always
was-
across
side.
from the largest, yeah.
Four-
That was
4 and 8.
true. And then I also had that 9 was true. You can always divide the coefficients when dividing fractions or expressions. Why couldn't you divide the coefficients?
Always.
Always, if there's no coefficients, there's 1? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. I don't understand. Sorry. I'd be that kid that would say, I don't understand that question.
I love that, because that's what we want in our mathematicians. We want curious students that persevere through problems and find ways to explain their reasoning. So what we use in our professional development around mathematics instruction is the intertwined strands of mathematical proficiency, and this comes from a resource, Adding It Up. So these are the 5 strands. They're interwoven for a reason. One doesn't develop on its own. So conceptual understanding, as you can see, it's about what math means and why. So for instance, we wouldn't want students to just know their multiplication facts. We would want them to know why multiplication and how multiplication works. Strategic competence. We want students to be able to approach and solve flexibly. We want them to be able to choose a strategy that makes sense for the problem and not just follow a set of steps. Adaptive reasoning. We want students to be able to explain and justify their thinking, which also includes listening to others' reasoning. And the next part about procedural fluency, there's a couple of components to procedural fluency. I was talking about knowing your math facts. Procedural fluency does house that ability to know addition and subtraction facts and multiplication and division facts. And there's some interesting research around fluency versus automaticity. We want our students in procedural fluency to be able to automatically recall those facts, but it doesn't mean they're any less of a mathematician if it's not automatic, that they can still be procedurally fluent and have strategies to solve higher level math. The last rope in the strands of mathematical proficiency is the productive disposition, which Patty, you were exemplifying over there. We want students to be doers of math and have persistence and see this as a useful tool in their life. So with that being said, we think about math instruction. I think about math instruction, especially with our teachers, of having their own set of beliefs and values around math instruction, and what that comes out in our teaching, and it comes out in our students' ability to do math. So coaching, I'm very passionate about. It provides that personalized opportunity in the classroom to go into depth about all those strands of mathematical proficiency. at any specific grade level or over any math concept. The rules that we use for our understanding, if kids just follow rules, it leads to inefficiency, and it doesn't allow them to be thinkers or metacognitively understand what they're doing as they're working. And memorizing steps, it doesn't create any productive disposition, and it actually sets kids up to be trapped later on in their thinking when those rules kind of expire. When we put an emphasis on speed, I can think of my own math journey in a couple of instances where if I didn't have the answer quickly, I wasn't good at math. But we know that the connection to the brain and the evidence around best instructional practices, that you don't have to be fast, you need to be flexible. So we offer our kids a number sense routine with a high floor, low ceiling activity, so all kids can access math and feel like they're the doer and sense makers of math. And then the last instructional routine that is kind of from previous thinking is that there's one right answer. There are many ways. We have standard algorithms that we all kind of go to solve math in our lives, but that standard algorithm is only standard if it makes sense to you. You go to another country and their standard algorithm is very different. So we promote student-created strategies, and on the next slide I'll talk about some kind of high leverage models and strategies that we promote. So just like literacy, we have curriculum that drives our scope and sequence. And in pre-K through 5, that's Bridges mathematics program, very conceptual program that promotes the use of various models, manipulatives, visual models, as well as some abstract thinking, abstract models. And in 6th and 7th grade, we use Open Up, which is a version of illustrative mathematics, which follows the instructional routines that we value in our pre-K through 5 program. The high leverage concepts that we use are from a company in Williston called All Learners Network. It's an agnostic tool. It can go with any program, but it allows teachers to meet a student where they're at with their model development and strategy selection, and it provides some vertical shelf life for both of those things. The instructional practices highlighted on the bottom make a program better. There's no one program that does it all. On the literacy slide, you saw all the things we bring in, and in selecting one program to drive our scope and sequence, we highlight instructional practices that bring out the best in our teachers and allow them to meet the needs of our students. And you go to the next slide. Similar to literacy, we have a math vision. You can see our math vision statement at the top. In 2023, we adopted a new math program, Bridges Mathematics, and next year we'll be upgrading all of the tweaks to the Bridges 3rd edition. You can see some other bigger decisions we've made in that timeline. The work this year is around those high leverage practices across our levels of support, being able to diagnose what a student does understand, meet them where they're at over a mathematical concept, and support them in their learning.
Awesome.
Does anybody have any
Questions about math?
Excellent job.
Excellent job. Wow. Nice job, Jessica. Okay.
Well, wait, what do we do in 8th grade? Because that's kind of like a, well, for math.
7th grade.
Well, it says, so math goes through 7. Open up math curriculum for grade 7.
Oh, this is just saying about where we've gone with our practices and how we've shifted our practices. We are embarking on shifting to 8th grade as well.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's a growing up through the grade levels as the perspectives and practices shift and change, making certain that we're staying with our students as their perspective and practices change, that we're providing those opportunities as we move through the grade levels.
Do we offer the dreaded algebra to 8th graders?
We do.
Okay. So it is a choice that they have based on where they're going. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that was, I would suggest you just maybe talk a little bit about, like, what do you do with students who are far ahead of maybe their peers? And, you know, I mean, I know that from a structural standpoint in the classroom, a lot of times it has to do with, you know, sharing your knowledge and making comparisons and contrasting and that type of thing. But can you talk a little bit, because I know this group and many groups talk about, so what do you do if you have 5 students who really have, excelled significantly in their problem-solving skills in mathematics?
We have encountered one case of that in our elementary schools where we're problem solving, the student is far beyond their grade level. Typically we have students that were, a grade level or above, but what we ask for students is to go deeper into those models and be able to explain their strategy many different ways, verbally, with manipulatives, with a visual representation. Can you do it using a string of equations? And that is true conceptual understanding and a way to show the student is truly mathematically proficient. So we ask students to go deeper, not more.
Mm-hmm. And I bet you push them from a number standpoint as far as, using the number system more flexibly into decimals and fractions.
Within that agnostic tool I was talking about, the high leverage concepts, we think about counting in our pre-K, K, additive reasoning, first and second grade, third grade and fourth grade, multiplicative reasoning, ratios and proportions, and so forth as you go up. And we think about those range of numbers and how those range of numbers fit into models. So we can challenge a student by selecting a different range of numbers. You can use an area model to multiply and divide whole numbers, but it looks very different when you use an area model to multiply and divide fractions or decimals. So we can challenge students by using that model to think about different ranges of numbers.
Great.
We used to have a number of students, 8th graders, who took geometry. And it was a burden for them because they had to find transportation from Orwell, whatever. Now they're here, of course. Are any of them taking geometry?
Not that we've encountered in the time that the middle school's been here, or actually the entire time that I've been here. But it's certainly, as you just indicated, an opportunity should that student arrive on our campus and have that mathematical ability.
A tool that I did highlight, those high leverage concepts and those concepts I was stating, like counting, additive reasoning, multiplicative, and so forth. Those are all like a pathway to algebra, so it's allowing us to make sure that we're not just getting to 8th grade and being like, algebra, how does that all come together? That we're able to kind of support students with the highest leverage concepts, models, and strategies to make sure that they're getting what they need along the way, rather than do you have it or do you not in middle school kind of a thing.
And I hate to do this, but those things get a student a 4.
We ask our students to go deeper. So if they can, for instance, write a story problem about using multiplication and an area model to solve for fractions and decimals in a grade level that's outside of their content, if they're in 3rd grade kind of talking about that, yeah. We do have those conversations.
Wow. Okay, great. That was Jessica. Okay, me. So, as I put in my board report last week, some updated information about behavior across our schools, and something that we've recognized in equal value to literacy and math is making certain that we are identifying supports that students need in the areas of social, emotional, behavioral learning. And so on the left, there's this series of circles, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts to that smaller circle. We've decided to take self-management, responsible decision-making, and then combine self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship skills, call that communication, and have developed, grounded in an evidence-based curriculum called Second Step, a series of lessons that, as Jessica and Molly both talked about, are a foundational curriculum, but provide lessons when students might be exhibiting certain emotions that allow us to really then differentiate. And it might be hard to conceptualize this a bit, so if you take one of each of these items that I'm passing around, you'll see a series of activities, and then I even actually printed something that's a formative and then the summative for a kindergarten classroom. And as an example of how it is we go about making certain that we are providing opportunities for students in our classrooms to practice, their social, emotional, behavioral learning, and then we're able to then reflect on it with educators and then make decisions based on what we're seeing from students. It was important that we identified a curriculum similar to literacy and math, so that we could take that information and triangulate it with some of the data that I had shared in my board report, which was incident data, majors and minors from our PBIS system. And so we used this information, we used that information, and then we provide a screener similar to, I'm thinking about Star 360 that I talked about before Thanksgiving, and we give a social emotional screener twice a year. And so again, in the nature of making certain that all students are able to move into spaces and learn, whether it's music or literacy or math, that we're attending to their social emotional behavioral needs as well. And similarly to what Jessica and Molly shared, we've developed kind of a vision for that work and our design goals, and then kind of where we've been, where we're headed, what we're currently doing. And so you can see under what we're currently doing, we do pull from a number of different resources to be able to build a bank of lessons for educators to use based on their judgment. So if you looked at that item, if it made its way around, that has a series of different, it's in a grid, it's in a table, you'll see a number of different lessons that are highlighted there under location. Things are linked. You'll see we've identified how it would look in a grade book, the assignment name. And so we've done this by trimester. Again, this is kindergarten. So as we identified the needs of our youngest students, we knew that we needed multiple different resources and sets of lessons to be able to really suss out kind of what their needs are, and then how we could differentiate what those needs might be. Molly and Jessica didn't mention this because it wasn't a focus of their presentation, but when we recognize that students are working off grade level in literacy and math, we have a series of instructional steps and curricula that we use to help meet those students' needs. Similarly, we're making certain that we identify, based on what we're looking at for data, that we can use social emotional interventionists to have small groups and target skill development that students need, social emotional and behaviorally as well. And so again, making certain that we attend to the entire student as they're working with us across our elementary schools. This design and kind of what I'm talking about now is probably in its second or third year of implementation. It isn't something that we started with, but it's something that we've started to develop and workshopping as we recognized the need. I don't know if there's any questions on, I think there's just 2 more slides if you're kind of waiting. Questions about, Kurt? That doesn't sound like a question, it sounds like you're going to tell me something.
I heard you say, correct me if I did not hear you say, that this stuff is the equal in importance of literacy and math. And I think a lot of people, if they heard that, they would think that symbolizes everything that's wrong with public education today.
I would say that the students that we work with might present differently than maybe they were if you were comparing what's wrong with public education today to something that you had an image of from prior years in education.
Yeah. Just seems like there's a cottage industry that's grown up around social emotion.
I think it's a recognition of students and the students' needs. And if you're not attending to students' needs, how are you then going to move into other places and spaces to teach them? So again, I go back to that comparison of what someone had of an image of education and how students presented in a prior time to are using evidence and data in the students that are before us to develop tools and systems to be able to best support our students so that they can access all that they're able to when it comes to literacy and math.
So we're denied that image I mean, that's all we can have is the image that we had of when we were in school, because we're not in the schools, and Julie and I kind of had it out about whether we should be in the schools. You know.
I would just say, as the professional, as a director of curriculum, you hire me to assess the situation and work with people that I work with to make the best decisions to meet students' needs, that they can social, emotionally, and literacy and math grow. And so I shared data in November before we went on Thanksgiving, where for the first time that I could find, going back to 2014, we had all of our math scores in the elementary schools meeting or exceeding the state average on our state assessment. So I would say that our attentiveness to all that students bring with them to school it's showing that we're meeting those needs when we start to see our literacy and math scores on a state assessment meet or exceed the state average. So I would just say,
as the COVID era dysregulation, we used to call it something else, but dysregulation sort of eases. I'm hoping this cottage industry won't continue to grow.
I would push back on that and say society as a whole is much different than it may have been even before COVID.
So then I'm going to interrupt because I'm listening to you guys intently, and I'm thinking about myself when I was in school and my peers and when I went through school, which like you said, you can't help but think about that, right? Because that's all you know. And I'm thinking about, the fact that it's recognized, it now has a name, it's now being taught. And it makes me think of autism and how we never diagnosed autism because we didn't know what it was. So now all of a sudden we have more autism diagnoses because we've defined it and we've given it a name, and now we can recognize it. Those students were always there, maybe in less numbers, maybe in different percentages, but they were already there. Now they have a name. As I'm listening to this, I'm thinking to myself, I remember my kindergarten teacher doing a lesson on relationship skills, but it wasn't called social and emotional learning. That was the lesson for the day when I was doing kindergarten, right? So in my brain, I started thinking, I'm thinking back, and if I think really hard, what were the things I was already learning that we just didn't call this? So maybe it seems a little more named and a little more recognized. Is it a cottage industry? I think that kind of happens with things as they get names and people recognize them and they want to develop tools to support people with them. You and I could go back and forth about how high or low it is and hopefully where we think it's going to go and why. Is it the phones? Is it this? Is it that? But I feel like just a lot of what's happened now is we've given things names and we've called them something, and we've decided, learned and now understand that it's important to name them and actually call them what they are instead of they've always seemed somewhat embedded in school, just never had a name.
Well, we've given them names and we've given them dollars.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not going to deny that things are about money, Kurt. I'm not going to deny that at all. But I'm just saying, as I'm thinking about like, what did I learn in school? I learned these things. How did I learn these things? I wasn't in social and emotional learning class, right? I learned them because they were still being taught and recognized just differently. So, and maybe now it's bigger than it was before. But that's because I was listening. I was like, how can I understand what's happening? So, I mean, I think I think it helps. I think it definitely, I agree with you, Casey. I can see where you look at your end results of what you're looking for. We're looking for kids to be proficient. Is it helping kids be proficient? It seems like it is. That's what it's showing us. So. And
I would just say that we have a responsibility to make certain that we understand all that a student is, and that is, in addition to academic learning, it's who they are, and their practices and habits.
Can I ask you not an argument, but an actual question? How much of a trade-off time-wise is it for, against instruction for math and instruction for literacy? How much of a time trade-off is it?
Not a time trade-off at all, because it's embedded into the work of the classroom. And so in an elementary classroom, organizing yourself after you've had maybe breakfast and then moving to something called morning meeting, where you're doing a series of different activities, you are in that sense starting to prep maybe whatever it is you might be doing for a later lesson. So you're getting kind of some information there. And so it's not as though you're transitioning and saying, all right, for this 45-minute amount of time, you're going to deliver this lesson and go about your day. You're kind of, as Julie just said, you're working through systems that you already have in place, and you're using this lesson that you kind of seen that we provided for you, and you're kind of using that to gain information about a student to be able to then better articulate where they are on this continuum as they manage skills and behaviors for themselves. Different from in a 50-minute block or 50-minute class, you're going to say 20 minutes is set aside for this, 20 minutes is set aside for that.
I was just gonna say to Kurt, as a parent of an 8th grade boy, when I look at any of my kids really, but I find these on the report card or in what's it called? Power School. Thank you. Like we looked at his Power School the other day, and we looked at his grades, and then we looked at one of the things was like organization was a 2. So I'm like, okay. What is this affecting his grade? So then I said, okay, let's sit down. Let's talk about how are you organizing your day? Like, do you have a planner? Are you forgetting your homework? Like, you have a test. How are you? To me, these are life skills. Like, I have to do this in my job every week. I have to look at, this is what I have to get done. And I have deadlines. How am I going to do it? So like, from a parent perspective, I find them very helpful because it helps me understand where my child maybe needs a little bit of extra guidance from me to help him understand how can we better organize our day? How can we better, organize our week so that we have time for soccer and Dungeons and Dragons and all these other things that he enjoys doing, but he also has to do algebra and history and, he has a binder check and all these other things. So, like to your point, I understand that, math and literacy are very important, and as a business owner, I can tell you, the team formative, I'd like to work this with my staff. Like, let's put these people, like, I just feel like these are also real world skills that kids really need to learn, that they're not going to learn at home. They're going to learn in a group with students and in group settings, and I find it very helpful.
We've had habits work well before COVID. We've had that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying, I like that they're now detailed on my child's report card because I can understand where he may be struggling or where he's excelling in areas that aren't just, educational, math, history, that kind of stuff.
Sue, were you going to say something, Patty?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think we now, as a society, realize that we're almost like a mental institution, the school is, and we know that our children need to be mentally healthy, and you're meeting that with this before they can learn, before they're ready to sit down in the morning and learn. So these pieces are adding up for these kids that mentally need some structure that they don't have at home. And that's helping to prepare them to do better in their education piece. So I can see where this is really a fabulous piece to help our kids because they do not come to school. Some come to school hungry. That's why we offer breakfast. This other piece is they come to school needing that mental health piece to be able to learn. And I see this as part of that.
Patty?
I would just say that particularly for young kids, and I know, Kurt, that you're a high school teacher, but I think it's really important that you think about that this all starts, with the younger population, obviously. And hopefully by the time they reach high school, they then are learners, they know how to be a student, how to be a learner. I think of the classroom, the kindergarten classroom, first grade classroom of 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago when I went to school, maybe 60 years ago now. The difference in what that classroom looks like. Classrooms used to be a succession of chairs, desks and chairs where kids sat down and those children were expected to sit in their seat. They were expected to do some seat work, listen to the sage on the stage, and then produce whatever the C work was. Questions were asked at a minimum for at least the classes that I looked at. So now that doesn't happen. Now there are kids in small groups over here and individuals over there. There might be 6 adults in that room at one time helping to deliver not just instruction, but procedural pieces like your SE, it used to be SEL, but SEDL now. All of that goes on in a pretty, what would look like disorganized way. If you didn't know what was going on, you would think that was disorganization, where actually it's incredibly well organized by our teachers and our coaches and our administrators and everybody in those classrooms. And that's in preparation for then the learning of the subject that you're talking about, so that they're able to attain that knowledge that they need.
It's Medicare, it's Medicaid.
Cool. Thanks, Betty. So I handed out sound-based decoding instructional kind of model that has been developed and used across our elementary schools. One of the slides is just showing that we've created these for not only literacy, but for math, and then social emotional behavioral learning. We call it classroom management practices in here. And so I always say, regardless of what school district you work in, you want to be able to move into an interview or another school district and recognize that it's not about a program, that it's not about a curriculum, but it's a set of instructional strategies that are evidence-based that will allow you to shine in an interview or be relevant in a new school district. So we try very hard across our schools to say, these are practices, regardless of what you might encounter as a math program or a literacy program, that'll help you wow your colleagues if you're new to a district, or stay relevant if there's a new district. Just wanted to share that. And then last, on the curriculum website, on the Slate Valley website, you'll see brochures for our elementary schools. And so it'll identify social studies, it'll identify science, the arts, PE and health. And so there is more than just literacy and math and social emotional behavioral learning across our elementary schools. And so I didn't bring copies of these, but you should be able to access them. That green link is actually to the curriculum part of our website if you wanted to check those out. The last thing I'd say is thanks to Jessica and Molly. I would say that their work with administrators and teachers is work that's all relational. It's relationship-based. If you've ever been in a profession where you've had to change your practice to the point where you might be thinking, wow, what I was doing for 10 years, maybe not what I should have been doing, that can be a jarring moment for a professional. And so it is not an easy task to float through these layers of working in classrooms, working with administrators, to then be able to change and shift practice. I know when I arrived and I worked with Kurt a bit, some of that change around grading practices and proficiencies can cause you to question what it is you have been doing. And so thanks for that for tonight. And then just in general, that role across the system is very beneficial and pretty unique. Thanks.
Thank you very much, guys. It's always very enlightening to hear. And I like the conversation that it brings to the table, and I like all the different thinking that it brings to the table, because we are just, I know a lot of us here are educators, but at the same time, we are also community members, right? And so to understand what's happening in classrooms and in schools is super important when we meet somebody in Dollar General or you get cornered in Shaw's and you've got to talk to them. So we appreciate it very much. Thank you. All right, now I got to find all these papers. When I failed my quiz, Peter, I copied yours. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh, Julie, that was terrible. That social emotional, his well-being. Peter, would you like to?
I'm okay.
This is filmed.
All right. Committee reports. Finance, please. Go on.
Okay.
Where'd you go? There you are.
So Finance Committee met earlier tonight. Continued looking at different budget options. Last week after our meeting, I think there was some pretty sad faces. With some of the initial reports coming from the state. Decreasing enrollment is the big buzzword, and it continues to happen. The state had initially lowered our long-term weighted average daily membership by 120 students, which is very, very significant when it comes to calculating education expenditure. Our overall expenditure budget was up modestly. In the week since that last finance meeting, the state has rerun those numbers. We have gained back a bunch of the students that initially had disappeared. And part of that has to do with the fact that they have made some significant corrections in our free and reduced lunch population. So we're still formulating things, trying to decide where to go. But at present, it's looking like our expenditure budget is up 2.33%. We're, or 2.65% in the scenario that we are going to kind of head toward. We'll see what else happens. The other piece to this, we certainly have all heard changes coming from Washington. We are looking at potentially, if we were to lose all of our federally funded positions, a total of $932,000 in losses that would not be coming from the federal government, that would either have to be made up at the local level or would have to be eliminated. Unfortunately, and we're trying to present a budget based off of estimates with a lot of unknowns. We don't know to the extent or when some of these federal cuts could happen. Things like the yield, which will have a determination on everybody's taxes, won't be known until, usually that doesn't come until May. So long after we voted on the budget at least once. So there's more things coming. We have played around with and reduced the amount of money both going into the maintenance budget in different scenarios. We've also decreased the amount of money going into the capital reserve and moving that money into more cash to open, with the idea of trying to balance people's taxes a little better. Half of any tax increase, roughly, from everything that I've read, about half of the increase can be attributed to the state's artificial buy down of tax rates last year. So that has to be made up. They took one-time money to lower people's increases, or some people saw a decrease in their taxes last year. That's got to be made up this year. Unless they somehow decide to do it again, but there's a lot of unrest in Montpelier, so we don't know where that's going. So we're still working on things. We're looking at some changes in personnel that are driven by decreases in student numbers. That they have enacted minimum class standards, class size standards, which can also have differing effects. So there's more to come. We certainly are looking at another finance meeting prior to our next board meeting, where we will hopefully adopt a budget recommendation to bring to the full board for approval. Hopefully, we keep getting some positive news out of Montpelier that would help change some of these numbers. And we'll see where it goes.
All right, any other thoughts? Yeah.
Can Cheryl run the numbers for restoring the music position? And then can we rediscuss the student numbers for that? Because that young lady made a pretty, I thought, compelling case, and we ought to take it seriously.
Yeah, I think the thing that's hard from the outside in is understanding, like, we have less sections of classrooms now, right? So like 5 years ago, there might have been 2 kindergartners, 2, in Castleton, 2 this, 2 that. Now there's 1, or there's, kind of less of things. I want to say to Kurt that we do charge our superintendent to build a budget from the ground up, right? We had this conversation at finance too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, I'm not saying don't look at it, but we don't start from last year and then, right? We start again at the beginning, look at our new scenario, where are we?
Zero-based budgeting.
Yeah, zero-based budgeting. And I think that's really important to look at, right? Which is why they look at every single part of what's going on. Every single section of English, every single section of social studies at the high school level, every single section of math, every single, right? Every single. So I definitely can't hurt to look at it again when we meet again, right? To see what it would look like. But I also think we need to be cognizant of our graph that we saw today of our declining enrollment, and make sure that we take that very seriously as well for our constituents.
Yeah, so my question was, is the reduction in because of budget issues or because of declining enrollment?
Reduction in what?
The music.
I think
It's a full-time?
it's a combination of declining enrollment.
Yeah.
And what we're offering to be the equity of offerings across schools
Okay.
is another piece of that too.
Yeah, and looking at class size too, because we have some class sizes at the middle high school that are just way too small for music right now, looking at 3 kids in some of the courses, or 6 kids, or next semester 0 in one of the courses. So we really need to be looking K-12, and this isn't just an elementary
Right.
conversation. So
Right.
I think was kind of a bit misleading that we are looking K-12 at this.
Yeah, that was my,
Yeah, not
Yeah.
just
Trying-
elementary school.
right, trying to understand what the whole picture
Yeah.
was.
And principals are going to be working together, and I'm meeting with the music teachers on January 7th to kind of talk about this.
So we'll have more information for that budget meeting. And there's, as you saw in our finance committee meeting, Cheryl's magic, right? She can pop in some numbers and show us what things look like.
I think one of the things, we were discussing a little earlier tonight in here, but, as a district, over the last 15 years, our student numbers have gone from 1,600 to 1,200. Less students. So, that's a 25% reduction. That's significant. And as I said in the finance committee meeting, man, I wish that we could just come up with, we could add 300 or 400 students across the district, because it would certainly make budgeting a whole lot easier. It would really change everything. I don't see that happening right off, with us having the lowest birth rate in the nation presently. So,
Yeah. But when we have our finance committee meeting, everything's on the table.
Yep.
It's all worth conversation.
And I do feel like during that conversation, we talked about not ensuring, I'm sorry, forget the not for a second, ensuring that our music program would continue to offer those things like concerts and other performances as they have in the past. So it's not, we're not attempting to erode the program at all as much as we can.
Yeah, I think the grade levels in which things are offered would need to be looked at because we're not doing it universally across our elementary schools now. And that's an equity issue for kiddos as well.
And the declining enrollment, is it just like because of birth rate or because
Yes.
kids are going elsewhere?
I think
Just for-
and nationally it's declining. I mean, just Vermont is hit really hard with it.
So more to come at our next board meeting, after our next finance committee meeting.
But be clear, we are not the narrative that the state is putting out. And I think we need to be very clear with our constituents. We are not the narrative. We are doing a very good job with what we have, and we will continue to do so, but we are not the narrative. That's important. All right, public comment in round 2. Okay. Agenda building for January 12.
Budget, next year's school calendar, hopefully tuition.
Oh yeah, we have to approve tuition, right? Yeah.
Later. Yeah, I think the big one will be the budget.
And we'll have a presentation to share with the full board too for
Yes.
the budget meeting. Make sure if you're running for school board, you have your petition, and if you know somebody who would love one, get them a petition. All right. Oh, is this the updated, Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's that middle column.
Yeah. Option number 2 for the thing being handed around that will also be in our minutes is what we were looking at. Thank you, Cheryl.
And these, as you can, a lot of these numbers are still very preliminary, as it says it's preliminary.
Yep.
Tax rate stuff is still estimated because the new CLAs have not been released by the state yet. So these numbers could change by the next meeting with no other changes happening. So
Yeah, that's the newest one
That's
out of
the one from
finance. Cheryl printed it out for us.
Yeah.
So. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Have a good night. Stay warm.
Yeah.